28, 1 through 28. So we want to get a Bible inside your hands. If you do not have a Bible, we want to get a Bible inside your hand. You don't own a Bible. That's our gift to you. You can keep that Bible, use it, highlight it, and everything else. But go ahead and turn to John chapter 19 as we get ready. But on our way there, let me make some announcements. Everybody say March. March. Listen, March is coming up in a couple of weeks, and we have a lot going on here at March. So in March, so I want you guys to set your calendars. On March 2nd, we'll be having our Ash Wednesday service, and we've been doing that here for a little bit, and it's a really unique and beautiful service that's here at 6:30 p.m. March 2nd, the first Wednesday in March. On March 12th is going to be our youth talent show. Yeah. That's right, the appropriate response. We always have a grand time during those times. So yes, go ahead and take out your loans and stuff, go to Title Max, do all those type of things and stuff. You know what I'm saying? And, and get ready to help bless these kids and stuff, right? We love our kids here, man, and we really come and surround them, and they are gifted too. So come, we have an incredible carol time with that and stuff. And then Gospel Encounter, that's coming up March 19th. This is a time where we dedicate the entire day to just Jesus, breakfast, lunch, dinner here, and we go in. So get the app. On the app, you're going to get all these updates and stuff starting this week for how to find out how to sign up, how to get connected, and what to do with all those things that I just mentioned going down in March. So just clear your calendar. We're going to go hard in the month of March, all right? That being said, we're in John chapter 19, verses 1 through 28. I want to read that whole thing. So if you'll stand with me, we'll read verses 1 through 28. John chapter 19, verses 1 through 28. I'm just saying all of it. I don't know what plans y'all got, but let's go in. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in a purple robe, and went up to him again and again, saying, "Hail, the King of the Jews!" And they slapped him in the face. Once more Pilate came out and said to the Jews gathered there, "Look, I'm bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for a charge against him." When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." As soon as the chief priests and their officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify! Crucify!" But Pilate answered, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for charge against him." The Jewish leaders insisted, "We have a law, and according to that law, he must die, because he claimed to be the Son of God." When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid, and he went back inside the palace. "Where do you come from?" he asked Jesus. But Jesus gave him no answer. "Do you refuse to speak to me?" Pilate said. "Don't you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you?" Jesus responded, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." From then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free. But the Jewish leaders kept shouting, "If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar." When Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judgment seat at a place known as the Stone Pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabbatha. It was the day of the preparation of the Passover. It was about noon. "Here is your king," Pilate said to the Jews. But they shouted, "Take him away! Take him away! Crucify him! Shall I crucify your king?" Pilate asked. "We have no king but Caesar," the chief priest answered. Finally, Pilate handed him over to be crucified. So the soldiers took charge of Jesus. Carrying his own cross, he went out to the place of the skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha. There they crucified him, and with him two others, one on each side, and Jesus in the middle. Pilate had a notice prepared and fastened to the cross. It read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Many of the Jews read this sign were from the place where Jesus was crucified, was near the city. And the sign was written in Aramaic, Latin, and Greek. The chief priests of the Jews protested to Pilate, "Do not write the King of the Jews, but that this man claimed to be the King of the Jews." Pilate answered, "What I have written, I have written." When the soldiers crucified Jesus, they took his clothes, dividing them into 4 shares, one for each of them, with the undergarment remaining. This garment was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. "Let's not tear it," they said to one another. "Let's decide by lot who will get it." This happened that the scripture might be fulfilled that said, "They divided my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment." So this is what the soldiers did. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Cleopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved nearby, he said to her, "Woman, here is your mother, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, his disciple took her into his home. This is the word of the Lord. You may be seated. As you can see, this is a crazy long text, right? And there's a lot that's going on inside this text, and I won't be able to work through all of it. So what I'm going to do is really pull out some things that seem to really be standing out inside here for us. We will take up the whole time, but that's what I'm going to do. So I'll be jumping back and forth. The first thing I want to start off is asking you to ask yourself this question: do I see the King? Do I see the King? By the time the Old Testament is done, there was all these prophecies of a coming Messiah king. By the time you close out the Old Testament, all these prophecies, it's riddled all the way through, setting it up. A king who would establish this righteous kingdom that would bless the nations. By the time we get to the New Testament, the people of God have been waiting for that promised king for over 400 years, expecting him. There was things that they was doing all in preparation for him. It's important to know that whenever there was a new king, right? Whenever there was a new king, there were this public coronation. They wanted people to see the king. There was a public coronation that usually had a few common practices. One was there was a public crowning. They wanted people to see this king in his crown. 2, there was a royal robe that was thrown on that king. 3, they would present this new king to the people. Normally it was at the palace and all the people gathered there, but there was also times when the king would parade through the streets and the people would come out their houses and line the street throwing flowers on the ground honoring the new king. But it was a public thing for everyone to see him. 3, there was a public declaration by a royal official of the kingly court declaring him as king. John artistically weaves into this story what looks like a weird coronation of a king. Here's what I'm saying. Here's why I'm saying that. Jesus, he has this public crowning. A public crowning. People see him inside the crown, but the weird part about it is that his crown isn't made of gold and silver with rubies and diamonds. His crown is made of thorns and it hurts. They put this robe on Jesus. There's a robe that's placed on Jesus. And John makes sure he reminds us the color of the robe. It was purple. Purple was a color that represented royalty. And most of the kingly robes were purple. The weirdness about it is the people who placed this robe on him were torturing him and mocking him. Like other kingly coronations, Jesus is presented to the crowd outside of the palace so people can all see him. The weird thing about it is that he's bloodied. He's beaten. In the same way other kings have a public declaration by an official of the court, Pilate. is the official representative of Caesar who would publicly refer to Jesus as king over and over and over again. As a matter of fact, on Jesus' cross, Pilate would have a sign placed that read, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. He would have it translated in Aramaic, which was the local language, so all the local Hebrews would see Jesus, the King of the Jews. He would have it translated in Latin, which was the language of Rome, so now all the Roman citizens and all the Roman officials, they see it. He also has it translated in Greek, which was like the universal language of the time, sort of like how English is in this time, right? And by the time everything is all said and done, the words, "All hail the King," has been said. John shows all these elements of a kingly coronation, but it's easy to miss it when you look at it in context to all the mockery that's happening. It's easy to miss it when you look at it through the lens of all the evil that's taking place around it, and that leads to our first point. It's easy to miss the goodness of God when you make all the brokenness around you the focal point. You don't normally look at this text and say, oh man, wow, look at a king being coronated, but that's what's happening. But it's easy to miss. It's easy to miss the goodness of God when you make all the brokenness around you the focal point. But sometimes the king that we've been searching for is right in front of our face with signs and wonders, but we miss him because deep in our hearts, we're not really searching for the king. So it's easy to miss him. We've seated ourselves on the throne of judgment. We've gotten used to playing king ourselves. So we're not really looking for the king to come and tell us what we can and can't do. We've become more like the Jewish mob in John's story. When presented with their king, they respond, "We have no king." And then caveat it with, "But Caesar." That statement, "we have no king," it actually reminds me of Judges, the book of Judges, where the people of God had been influenced by the surrounding nations. They've been with them for so long, and they've been influenced, and they started to do the things that the surrounding nations was doing. And they went into this really dark time, this dark place. There was so much crazy things that was happening. And the person that's writing the book of Judges, eventually he starts repeating this phrase. In those days, Israel had no king. And everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And the reason why this was hurtful was because God was supposed to be their king. But it was functioning like a people who had no king, who had no leadership, who had no direction. They started to do the things that they thought was right instead. They became their own kings. So again, the question is, do you see Jesus as king? King on a throne whose rule and reign you can trust and rest in? Or does the brokenness around you eclipse the sovereign reality of his reign? That's the first thing. Do I see the king? The next thing, and I'm going to just jump up and down the place. The next thing, I want to look at it, verses 9 to 11. But again, do you see the king? Look at verses 9 to 11. And he went back inside, talking about Pilate, and he went back inside the palace. "Where do you come from?" he asked Jesus. But Jesus gave him no answer. "Do you refuse to speak to me?" Pilate said. "Don't you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of the greater sin." I love studying and learning from the mannerisms of Jesus. I love studying, just looking at how he responds, his cadences. I think the more that you study the mannerisms of Jesus, the better you understand the mannerisms of the Spirit. Because literally the Spirit of Jesus, watch how he responds, how he acts. In John's narrative, this is the second conversation between Jesus and Pilate, and both go in very similar ways. In John 18, Pilate asks if Jesus was king, but Jesus doesn't answer, but instead questions Pilate's motives. But when Pilate refers to the Jewish mob that was trying to get Jesus killed as Jesus' peeps, then Jesus is like, oh, hold on. And he corrects them. And he said, well, my kingdom is not of this world. Otherwise, my people will be acting just like the world. Now you get to chapter 19, and Pilate is following up his question he asked in chapter 18. Well, all right, if your kingdom is not of the world, he comes back like, where are you from then? Jesus ignores that question. Where he responds is when Pilate comments on power. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all record these moments when Jesus doesn't answer a question, and they all record moments when Jesus does answer the question. And the thing, like, since they're all writing to different audiences, when you have all of them write about a particular thing, that means something. But they all record this behavior from Jesus. And what I believe we see Jesus doing is walking out Proverbs 26, verses 4 through 5. It reads like this: do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you yourself will be just like him. And then it follows that up with, answer a fool according to his folly, or he will be wise in his own eyes. Sometimes it's foolish to attempt reasoning with a fool in the throes of his folly. It's foolish. Sometimes we all have experienced that. It's like trying to reason with a drunk person. They're too intoxicated to reason with a sober mind. Too intoxicated. They're not going to get it. They're not going to go through it the way that they should. And we can be drunk on so many different things. We could be drunk on our own point of view. We could be drunk off of our logic. I'm a really logical person, I know. And you're just drunk off of how you perceive your logic. We could be drunk on our emotions. It's all just about how I feel inside of the moment. Everything is all eclipsed. We could be drunk on our anger, drunk on our pain, drunk on our pride. We could be drunk on power and authority. But when this starts to happen, what happens is everything we see and experience is distorted by our drunkenness. And we can't make sound judgments. And since we're looking at the mannerisms of Jesus and thinking about the mannerisms of the Spirit of God and stuff, I can't help but consider and wonder how many times the Holy Spirit hasn't answered our question because we have no idea of the folly that fuels it. No idea. You're going here, Lord, 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 and you're asking, and you feel like you're not getting the answer, and the Lord is like, you don't know how much folly is fueling that. I'll come back to that next year. I'm going to let life sober you out some. And then we don't get the answer we want in the time that we want, and we do what's right in our own eyes. Why? Because it became hard to see the king in context to everything else that we've been focusing on, the folly. But there's also these times where we have to answer a fool according to their folly. There's these times we have to. Why? Because they will think their folly is wisdom and do what's right in their own eyes, hurting others and themselves along the way. I gotta say something right here. But they're just way too drunk to notice the devastation. They just notice what they want to do. Sometimes it's hard to know how to thread that, but Jesus threads the needle well. And the only way that we'll be able to thread the needle like Jesus is that Jesus needs to be living inside of us. His Spirit needs to be living inside of us, leading us on when to say something, when to not say something. It's a marker of wisdom to know when to talk and when to shut your mouth. That's a marker of wisdom, to pick your battles wisely. Jesus doesn't directly answer regarding his kingship and where he's from, but he does respond regarding his true kingdom and the issue of power. Pilate, he's like, oh, you giving me the silent treatment? You don't know who I am? You don't know who I am? Don't you know I'm the one with the power and the authority? That's when Jesus is like, well, hold on. I'm going to answer that right there. He feels the burden to check him right there. Listen, fam. And he tells the Pilate, listen, let me tell you the proper perspective on power and sin. And in verse 11, Jesus answered, you would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you was guilty of the greater sin, power and sin. Next point, the gospel gives the right perspective on power and sin. Jesus doesn't ignore the reality that Pilate has a level of power and authority over him. He literally says it to him. He doesn't ignore that. Instead, he points to where the power comes from. When he points to where the power comes from, he said it was given to him. It was given to him. To grasp the purpose and the reason it was given, you have to go back to the giver. And to that end, Jesus says, it was given to you from above, meaning from the Father. All power and authority comes from the Father. But this is actually the part that the Jewish leaders are complaining about regarding Jesus. This is where they actually have the real issue at. Let's look back at John 5, 16 through 18. So because Jesus was doing these things on the Sabbath, the Jewish leaders began to persecute him. In his defense, Jesus said to them, my Father is always at work to this very day, and I too am working. For this reason, they tried all the more to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. So he says, this power comes from above, meaning the Father. And since Jesus claims sonship, this means union with the Father. So what's happening here? Jesus is willingly submitting to the power and authority that he has given to Pilate for this very moment. He's giving Pilate a chin check real quick. Jesus is the reason that Pilate is in this situation. He has purposed and ordained Pilate for such a time as this. Pilate is only responding to a situation that the Father has orchestrated and strategically placed him in. And yet still he is accountable for how he responds. He's accountable. So Jesus continues on to give this perspective on power and sin, and he says, therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of the greater sin. Notice he doesn't say Pilate is sinless, right? Instead, he points out that Judas and the Jewish leaders had the greater sin, but he doesn't say Pilate is sinless. There's sin going all the way around here. And I believe he's talking about the sins of omission and commission here. Omission and commission. You see, the sin of commission is doing what we know we shouldn't do. Like, you know you shouldn't do it, but you yet still plan to do it, purpose to do it, and how you're going to conceal it. Judas and the Jewish leaders are knowingly condemning an innocent man to death. They have witnessed the signs, heard the teachings. They are willfully using their power and their influence to break the law and murder Jesus while pretending to uphold the law. Commission. But the sin of omission is not doing what we should do and could do when we can do it. And it's the right thing. It's a sin committed by neglecting to do the right thing, omitting it, not doing what we have the power, means, and authority to do when it's right. We've omitted righteous behavior. Pilate believed Jesus to be innocent, and the right thing to do was to release him. Pilate has the power, the means, and the authority to do the right thing. But he would fail to do the right thing. This is why Pilate is not off the hook, and neither are we. Neither are we. This convicts us. It's two-edged sword. Pilate is not off the hook, but neither are we. You see, whether we are looking at Pilate or Judas and the Jewish leaders, if we look closely, what we should see is ourselves. Ourselves. Every single one of us inside this room has a measure of power and authority in one sphere or another. All of us. We're the ones who use that power to do what we know we shouldn't do consistently. We're also the ones who fail to use that power to do what we know we should do consistently. And we're not alone inside of it. Paul talks about it in Romans 7:19. He said, "For I do not do the good that I want, omission, but the evil I do want, that I do not want, is what I keep doing, commission." And then Paul will go on to describe what it feels like on the inside. He said there's like a war going on inside of his members. Y'all know it. Y'all know that feeling. Y'all know that conflicted chaos that's going on the inside. But at this moment, we get an opportunity to sort of see a physical reflection of it. Like I think when you look at Pilate's dilemma. So let me spend some time looking at Pilate for a bit. And Pilate deciding what he was going to do. You see, Pilate believed Jesus is innocent. He said it. He brought him out. I don't see no fault inside of him. His wife thinks he should have no part of the trial against Jesus. Pilate has dealt with insurrectionists before. Jesus is not like them. At most, probably he's a madman, but Pilate doesn't think he's a threat. I think Pilate is wrong on that. I think Jesus is a crazy threat. But Pilate doesn't think he's a threat because how he views power. So Pilate wants to let him go. He says it. But there's a problem. Look at verses 12 to 13. From then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free. But the Jewish leaders kept shouting, "If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar." When Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out and he sat down on the judge's seat at a place known as the stone pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabbatha. Pilate is trying to process what he's going to do, and one of the biggest influences there is the mob, the Jewish mob that's outside. I want to look at how the mob is moving while Pilate is trying to decide what he's going to do, and I let you guys connect those points. But they say Caesar's friend. You are no friend of Caesar. Now that's not a haphazard term. That's a political term. It's a political title for supporters of the emperor. You was considered Caesar's friend, quote unquote, if you support the emperor. Here's what the mob is doing. They're saying, listen, if you don't do what we want you to do, you're not really Caesar's friend. You don't really support him. Here's the threat that's in the background of that. If you're not Caesar's friend, but you are a Roman citizen and you are employed in Caesar's courts, then you're considered a traitor. There's deep things that goes along with that. But let me pause for a second, because have you ever been there yourselves? Like, have you ever been a part of a group where unless you do what the most vocal members of the group want you to do, you are treated like a traitor to the group? Have you ever been there? You don't do what they think you to do, how you should do it. And this group can be a group of friends. It could be a political party. It could be ethnic group. Oh, you ain't taking a stand away. We taking a stand. You ain't really down for the cause. It could be gender. It could be family members. Pilate knew to be considered a traitor means exile and persecution. Pilate knew this, that it could lead to death. And the current ruler, Tiberius, was known for it too. Known to be killing people. Oh, you a traitor? Get them gone. It's the same mannerism these groups have. Same type of mannerism. But continue to peep their manipulation. They says, anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar. Now a king has rule and authority in your life. And the group starts to see itself as king. It sees itself as the ultimate rule of authority, the thing to be loyal to at all times. You got to be loyal to this group. Anything that challenges the perceived authority is seen as opposition, a threat to the group's kingship. Even if what challenges the group is the authority of King Jesus. Now they start getting a little bit standoffish and start painting Jesus the way they would rather see Jesus. But there's an irony. There's an irony that's going on here. The irony is those people outside of Caesar's, of Pilate's court saying that you're not really down with Caesar, you're not really loyal to Caesar, they're not loyal to the king themselves. They're not actually loyal to Caesar themselves. The Jewish mob has actually been waiting for a promised king, and it's not Caesar. They have scriptures, songs, revolutionary slogans that they have been speaking and singing for thousands of years, saying that Israel's God is the true king, that a prophesied Messiah was coming from God and he is the true king. And Caesar was seen as a pagan ruler to be dethroned when the Messiah came. That's how those people that are dropping Caesar's name actually feel about Caesar. They didn't really have Caesar's well-being in mind. And most of these times, these groups that exalt themselves as king, demanding loyalty, don't really have the group's well-being in mind. That's why they don't leave space for discernment and following the King of Kings. Only blind loyalty. They use group manipulation and control, banking on our fear of rejection and persecution. Banking on that. So Pilate, he ultimately has to make a decision. He has to decide what he's going to do. Where does his loyalties really lie? With his conscience or with the group that's pointing to Caesar? We do too. Where do our loyalties really lie? With the great King of Kings or wherever that group is at? Wisdom was when you realize the best way to serve that group is to make sure your loyalties is with the King of Kings, not the group. That's where wisdom comes in at. To be in the group, but not of the group, for the sake of the group. But Pilate, he's like many of us. Pilate is like many of us. He doesn't have the courage to go with his convictions because he fears rejection and persecution from Caesar. He feels one way, but the threat is a different thing. And the mob is using that against him the same way these groups use that against us. So finally, in verse 16, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified. So the soldiers took charge of Jesus. Now, we're looking at Pilate, and we're looking at Pilate's dilemma and the mob, how the mob plays inside of this. But now I want to look at Jesus for a bit. And I want to say this. The gospel preferences family over mobs. The gospel preferences family over mobs. Pilate, he capitulates to the mob against his conscience in order to preserve self. That's the ultimate thing here, in order to preserve self. But then we look at Jesus on the cross. Jesus, he focuses on building family while literally dying to self. See, along our journey through this book of John, we have seen Jesus constantly resist the pressure of the mobs. Sometimes he avoids the mobs altogether. Other times he speaks up, confronting those mobs and bears witness. But now he is literally dying on the cross, and John records this interaction. Verses 25 through 27. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Cleopas, and Mary Magdalene. And when Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, "Woman, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, his disciple took her into his home. Most people believe Joseph, Jesus' earthly father, has died by this time. That's why you don't see much of him inside Jesus' ministry and hear much about him. It's customary for a widow to go and live with their eldest son if once her husband dies. If her husband dies, it's customary. Go live with the eldest son. But if that son dies as well, and there are no other sons for the moms to go live with, she's left in a really difficult situation trying to figure out how to care for herself, who's going to cover her and protect her. And you would think that that's the reason why Jesus is setting her up with his disciple. But sometimes people forget, Jesus had 4 younger brothers and at least 2 sisters. 4 younger brothers and at least 2 sisters, but he doesn't suggest mom live with any of them. Instead, he connects her to one of his disciples, specifically John. Why? I believe it's because his brothers were not believers yet. They don't become believers until after the resurrection. You see, Jesus doesn't merely see family as a biological construct, but a spiritual one. All the way throughout Scripture, you see him using this language, father, son, brothers, sisters, and oftentimes Jesus gives preference to the spiritual family over the biological family. That's why he entrusts the care of his moms to his spiritual family over the biological ones. Why? Because he would rather his mom stay with believers than non-believers, even if those non-believers are blood relatives. Why? Because the believers have a different perspective on worldview, on what's good, what's healthy, what's powerful, what's strong. How they will take care of mom is guided by something else. And I'm like, this isn't the first time. This is the other time where this guy wants to get down with Jesus and his crew. And he's like, yo, can I get with y'all? And Jesus is like, yo, I bet, let's go. And the guy is like, hold on. But we're in the middle of a funeral right now. They're burying one of our family members. And Jesus is like, let the dead bury the dead. Come on, let's go. So it's not the first time. You see, misplaced or distorted family loyalty can hinder spiritual maturity. We need to know and understand that. It can hinder that. Why? Because you don't spend eternity with biological family unless they are also spiritual family. But you will spend eternity with spiritual family regardless of biology. So there is an eternal reality to this thing. And the reason why I want to point it out is that we need to live into this reality of family now. Now, but like we have a king that's reigning over us. Now we are part of a family. Now we need to think about what does that mean to live more like brothers and sisters. People should be able to look at the church and tell what healthy family dynamics look like. Let me wrap this up. I'm going to call the band up. In verse 14, it says this, and I saved this for last. In verse 14, John is writing everything down, and I love the things that John highlights to make sure we get. In verse 14, he says, it was the day of the preparation of the Passover. It was about noon. Here is your king, Pilate says to the Jews. If you're not familiar with the Passover celebrates a time when God delivers his people from oppression in Egypt, and he does it by a series of plagues. It's in the book of Exodus, a series of plagues. Now, the final plague would cause all firstborn children to die. Both the Egyptians and the Hebrews were guilty of sin and deserving of death. So what God does is he devised this plan. Slaughter a lamb and mark your door with the blood of the lamb. So when the angel of death comes, he would pass over every home that was marked with the blood of the lamb. Now, ever since then, God commanded them to have a celebration to remember this time. So what they would do, they would always celebrate. And part of the celebration included a lamb. All the time, Pastor John was talking about that at the beginning, earlier on. It included the slaughtering of a lamb. John is pointing all this thing out because there's this irony that's going on here. While people are slaughtering and preparing the Passover lambs inside of their homes and getting ready for Sabbath, Jesus is the Lamb of God getting prepared for the slaughter, the eternal Sabbath that we will have inside of him. All this is going on. They're at home. They're caught up in just going through the motions of things. We've been doing this forever. We're just doing the same thing. And God is doing it right here with his son. We are the guilty people. And the mark is his blood and his spirit on our lives. Think about this text. And I can't help think about Revelation 5. In the area of verses 3 through 10. Now in Revelation 5, the same writer of the book of John, he has this vision from the Lord. He's caught up inside the spirit. He's brought outside of time, and God gives him a glimpse of past, present, and future realities, and he describes all these things that's going on. And as he's looking, he sees the tribulation, the brokenness that's going on inside of the land, and the need for there to be this peace, and it's all characterized by scrolls that need to be opened, but there was nobody worthy enough to open the scroll. John is looking and his heart is broken, and he starts weeping because there was nobody. Who's going to save us? Who's going to help us? And while he's there, he's not by himself. You have the elders and everything, and one of the 24 elders says, no, look. The Lion from the tribe of Judah has triumphed. He's opening the scroll. That lion language is kingly language. And John, he's excited. And John looks to see the lion. And when he turns, he sees a bloody lamb. What John is seeing is what's happening right now inside the book. He's seeing the cross, the king, the bloody lamb. All of that is what's happening right here. That's what he's seeing. But what I love is what happens right after this vision. I want to read that. Revelations 5, 9 through 10. It says this. And they sang a new song saying, you are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals because you were slain. And with your blood you purchased for God persons from every tribe and language and people and nation, and you have made them to be a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and they will reign on earth. We are that kingdom of priests, brothers and sisters. We are that family of priests that Jesus goes to secure, not because we did all the right things, we did the wrong things. We deserve death and exile, but we get grace and family instead. I want you to remember that you are a part of the family. God's seen you, all of you, everything. And he says, you're mine, you are a part of the family. Jesus died and rose again and solidified this reality. But probably you haven't accepted the body of Christ as your eternal family yet. Probably you just been sort of visiting, like you're visiting a cousin's house or something. And God is like, nah, you're mine. You're in my family. Time for you to stop functioning like a visitor and act like a family member. As we get ready for communion, what happens on the cross is it's all about this. It's all about John's vision, the bloody lamb. Jesus' body is given for us. This is represented by the bread. Jesus become bloodied like the lamb in John's vision for us. That's represented by the juice. And every single time that we take bread together, we're remembering this reality that he died to solidify a family that was from every tribe, every language, every people, every nation. And he called us together as a family of priests. As you come up, think about these things. Meditate on these things. Or probably there was something inside this sermon that you would like prayer for or some other reason. There will be people here to pray with you. Probably you realize and you hear God calling you to be a part of the family. And it's time for you to accept Jesus as your king. and be a part of the family. We would love to pray with you over here. Stop visiting. Be a part of the family. I love you. The tables are open. Let's break bread, and then let's worship our King together.